I just really want you all to get to know me before we go any further. So I'm going to be sharing a little bit of my story, not my birth stories, but really the story that got me to this point here, talking to you. So I never really had any interest in birth services. I never really had much interest or thought about birthing children in general. My nephew that was born in 2016 is probably the one that sort of catapulted me to that point of being like, I want to have children. I mean, I always thought I'd have children, but it was him. He was my second nephew and my third nephew, niece. You know, I had a niece, a nephew, and then another nephew. Didn't really know how to say that there. And so, you know, up until that point, you know, I was married. We thought we would have children, but it was him that made me really think, right, now's the time. But as for working in birth services of any sort, it was never something that had occurred to me. In fact, I have a university degree in film and television. I always thought that I would work in film and television in some respect, and it never really went anywhere. To be honest, I never really tried that hard. But I really still love film and TV, particularly film. That's a really important part of me, and so that will always be there. But yeah, the working in the birth world was something quite new to me. I had my first child in 2018, January 2018. So I was pregnant for most of 2017. And I, at that point, had no interest in hypnobirthing. I had never heard of it before. And my husband was actually the one that said to me, are you interested in doing hypnobirthing at all? And I was like, whoa, hypnobirthing? Like, what is that? It sounds really weird. You can't hypnotize yourself from feeling childbirth. That's a very, very ignorant opinion of mine back then. What I did do was I did prenatal yoga with a really, really great yoga instructor. She doesn't operate prenatal yoga anymore, but she was fantastic when she did. And she gave us so much knowledge about what the body is actually doing when you give birth that led me to be able to have a very positive birth experience when my son was born. And I think I knew at that point that if I'd done more birth preparation, it would have been even better. Now, I will be sharing my birth stories at some point, so I'm not going to go into too much detail about that, but it was a very lovely birth experience. So, then in 2019, I was pregnant with our second child, and I thought to myself, I'm gonna do hypnobirthing. I didn't do hypnobirthing with her. I looked into it and I basically talked myself out of it. Not because I didn't think that it would be wonderful, more because I've got quite high functioning anxiety, and the thought of going and sitting in a room full of people that I didn't know, doing something that I didn't really fully understand, was a bit off-putting for me, if I'm honest. And I should have looked into it more, but what I did was I bought a brilliant book, and so I read about hypnobirthing, and I just told myself that that would be enough. Here's a spoiler: it's not enough. It's enough to give you a very positive experience. I would say that my experience of having my daughter was ever just so slightly more positive than having my son. It really reinforced what I'd learned from having him about what the body is doing when you're giving birth, but it didn't really teach me anything about making important informed decisions, about advocating for myself, about my birthrights. There was loads that it didn't teach me. So I read this fantastic book and I had my daughter, and that was a very nice, positive labour. And about an hour after she was born, something happened to me that kind of made the experience a little bit less positive. Like I said, I will be going into my birth stories in another episode, so I'm not really going to go too much into that. But basically, something that should have been very, very traumatic happened. Now, I was quite fortunate in that the prep work that I had done made it less traumatic for me. But once I was home from the hospital, once I was recovered from the birth, and I'd sort of settled into parenting, so this was March 2020, I started to think, if I'd done hypnobirthing, would that have gone differently? And it was kind of like this swirl, this, like a bit like an earworm where you get a song stuck in your head. It was like a thought that I had stuck in my head. Would things have gone differently? Now, I know that I could have done all of the hypnobirthing prep work in the world and the same thing could have still happened. But I also know that it's less likely to have happened if I had done it. And I started doing lots of research and talking to hypnobirthing instructors and talking to people who had done hypnobirthing. And I started to think, like, there are so many people out there that aren't doing this and who are going through really much more traumatic experiences than me. But I know people that have done it and have had either what should have been a traumatic birth but wasn't because of the preparation, or who had absolutely fantastic births with no trauma. And I just started to think to myself, maybe I could be making a difference here. Maybe I could be a hypnobirthing instructor and I could stop other people from going through trauma. Again, there's no guarantees with anything that you do ever. But the reduction in trauma and the increase in positive birth outcomes where hypnobirthing is concerned is huge. So I then had this thought, this constant, could I do that? Could I do that? It really sort of lit a fire in my belly. And I kept putting that fire out by saying, or I kept trying to put the fire out by saying, I can't, at this stage in life, I've got 2 kids, I've got a job, I've got responsibilities. I can't just start a new career path, at this point in my life. I'm too old, like, it won't happen. And then probably about 2.5 years after she was born, I was just sitting there one day and I just thought, I'm going to do it. I don't know what changed. I don't know why it just came into my head, but I just thought, I'm going to do it. And I went downstairs and I spoke to my husband and I said, I'm going to train as a hypnobirthing instructor. I said, I'll keep my job. So I have another job that isn't hypnobirthing. I'll keep my job while I get on my feet, because I'll be building from the ground up. But I'm going to do it. I'm going to become a hypnobirthing instructor. And I suddenly had all of these ideas to go with it. Different things that I could be doing. Different ways that I could be helping people. Ideas for different courses that I could do, all sorts. And so I went online and I did a bit of research and I looked at all sorts of different hypnobirthing schools, and I finally settled on, I say finally, it didn't actually take that much decision making, but I settled on Love Your Birth Hypnobirthing Training with Abby Watson. She was quite expensive, but she offered the most support without a franchise, in the most accessible manner. So I could do all of my training from home, including my in-person training they did, online, on live sessions. So I could do everything from home. I didn't have to travel, and it was fun. It was fun, and there was no sort of time frame to it where you do it and you have to be qualified within a certain amount of time. It was all flexible within what you needed. So I did that and I passed in April 2023. And now here I am. Well, this will be going out in May, but I'm recording in April 2024. And it's still all quite new for me. I'm still finding my feet and finding the way, running a business works and things like that. But to say that it's one of the best things that I've ever done is definitely true. I absolutely love being a hypnobirthing instructor. I love working with a client and seeing it when it all clicks into place and they go, oh, this actually makes sense. And I love learning about birth. I love talking about birth. It's wonderful. And so now I'm really happy that I've made this decision to do this channel as well so that I can be sharing even more with the world. It feels, while I always trained, while I was studied for film and TV and planned to go on to be a screenwriter, this feels right to me. This feels like the place I'm meant to be. So that's wonderful. That's a lovely feeling. And I've got big plans. Big plans. So that's it. That's my story of how I got here. Now, the next two videos I'm going to share are going to be my birth stories. They are going to be quite detailed. So I hope that that's something that you'll enjoy, but understandably, birth stories aren't always for everybody. But there you have it. So please, again, do like and subscribe to my channels. Sign up for my newsletter if you want to keep up to date with what's going on and you want to get a free birth plan template. And do give me a like on social media or follow on social media, Ashley Nicole Hypnobirthing. Thank you for watching and listening today.